Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Rugby with Pads. Today, we're going to start our journey to the draft. Now, it is July, and draft season normally happens anytime in July, going into training season, probably later on in July, and very heavily in August. But I want to make sure that all of you listening and watching are prepared thoroughly for this. So, what I wanted to do today was do a bit of a recap on what we did last year. We did a draft 101, my top tips, but things evolve, things change, groupthink changes, self-think also changes. So I wanted to give a really good idea of what we're looking into this year, and really how we're adapting our techniques that we've used over the last couple of years in drafting to have an effect on this year. And I think there's going to be some interesting stuff. And what I want to do is take the 10 top tips we did in draft 101 and extend them by another 10 as well. So we're going to do a draft 102 on top of this as well. Some more advanced techniques, some things that you might be thinking about, some things to help you pivot in your drafts and ultimately, hopefully win your drafts. But please bear in mind, this is not a recipe for continued success. You need to make sure you manage your team throughout the year anyway. So we'll be jumping into that shortly. We'll also be doing a live reveal of the lottery draft for the League of Collusionary Gentlemen, the league that I set up last year as New Beginnings. We had a bunch of new starters. We're going to have a bunch more new players. I think there's potentially going to be 16 players in this league, so it's gone from 8 to 16. It's a league that I won last year, and I didn't set it up to win, but I did, unfortunately, so I'm sorry about that. But we are going to be doing a live reveal of the draft order for that, and then we are going to be drafting from the position we get. Now, as it's a lottery draft and I won, I get the least lottery picks, so likelihood is I will be drafting from either the 14th or 16th spot, depending on how we fill that league, but we'll get into that shortly. For now, though, I'll see you on the other side, and we will take a look at the draft 101. Seamless transition. Let's get straight into it. So I had 10 tips last year, and one of the first was probably simple, and you're going to think it's a little bit basic, but it was draft a running back early. A lot of people call it the robust running back technique. Yeah, I think it served me well over the last few years. You know what? It helped me win a couple of leagues last year. I got Christian McCaffrey early last year. I got Austin Eckler in another league. So, it hasn't done me too awfully over the last time. But I think the landscape is changing a little bit. And I'm going to caveat drafting and running back early with unless you have a slam dunk at wide receiver available to you. Now, the situation is, I'll go back and listen to the Fantasy Glossary and Fantasy 102 as well to learn about all these scoring metrics. But normally, points per reception, so receiving points, are more valuable and more commonplace than standard leagues where it's just however many yards you get. So a player like Justin Jefferson over potentially a Mixon or a Chubb is going to be a big advantage, I think. And running back is scarce. I mean, recently I've been doing a couple of mocks, and not official ones, just one of them to play around with. And Justin Jefferson seems to come off the board consistently at either the 101 or 102 behind one of the elite running backs. Running back is scarce, yes. So I think people want to just make sure that, and there is a big doppel for running back, and running backs are not being treated well. Dalvin Cook, Leonard Fournette, all players who you would have picked up early rounds last year who are not even on teams, as Zeke Elliott as well. I think running back is also a position, though, that you can pivot mid-season. It's one with high injuries, backups come in, those handcuff players become important as well. And I think it's also worthwhile mentioning that there are two styles of running backs on teams. There are those with bell cow backs, and there are few and far between. I think CMC, Saquon, probably if he doesn't hold in, Chubb and Najee Harris at a push are those bell cow players who will play almost every down, 3 down backs as we call them. And then there are those with committees and guys that you will see them switch out between different drives, different plays, different sets as well. Now, those with the bell cow backs, they're going to be good to get in the first round and good to get early. You're going to get the volume you need all season, but you also have to question in this league that there is no such thing as a true bell cow back, and that's the differentiation I'll make here. Najee Harris is going to get bitten into by Jalen Warren. Saquon has got Eric Gray behind him and Matt Breeder, who are going to come in for plays because he is so well used. I think probably one of the only ones who doesn't have much competition behind him is Nick Chubb, and he's a very much a pure runner. So you've got to be aware that you're maybe not getting as much value out of them as you are out of a really elite wide receiver who is going to be there on every down, because in this league, apart from a couple of teams, maybe the Falcons, it is a pass first league, and you are going to be seeing more receptions than maybe you are going to see running back volume. And another logic that we've used previously is wait on QB. I still follow that because I don't like giving up my first couple of rounds because I've already said running back is a position that drops off. You want an elite wide receiver, so surely you should wait on a QB. And yes, you probably should. But looking through all the analytics and where you were playing last year, it's always interesting to see how players drop off. Now, there is the top 5-6 guys. You've got Mahomes, you've got Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Burrow, Herbert probably as well. You know, they're kind of top 5 consideration, the guys who are going to have a lot of volume and a lot of success in their attacking play. There's probably not too much to differentiate between that. Maybe there is a tier gap between those first 3 and the next couple, and then it drops off considerably. And maybe you've got challenger players like Lamar, who I think is going to have a cheat code on the ground. Justin Fields, who a lot of people think he can have that model as well. And then it drops off considerably. The argument has always been the actual numbers at the end of the year between QB1 and QB9 is not that huge. And then between QB9 and 24, it's really small. So you could pick anyone in that kind of, we refer to the dead zone where you can't differentiate between players as a dead zone. You could pick anyone in there and they would be fine. So why not wait? And yeah, the common logic is there. I mean, last year, Geno Smith, Jared Goff, Justin Fields, all winners, potentially off the waiver wire as well. Russ was a loser, and if you picked him up in the 7th, I picked him up in the 7th and still managed to win that league because I just pivoted and got rid of him. And you need to pay up for Josh Allen and Mahomes because you're probably paying 2nd or 3rd round fees for them, maybe even 1st in some leagues, depending on how the scoring goes. I think take it with a pinch of salt because there is a lot of uncertainty, but those guys in the top 5 are going to get you a lot. But if you can pay 6th to 10th prices for them and maybe look at the upside, the guys who are being seen in the 5th and 6th round, the likes of Justin Fields and Lamar Jackson, who has dropped, I think have a lot more value this year. So wait on a QB, but don't wait too long because you then become the rest of the pack and you need to differentiate your team in other ways. You need to make sure you have a positional advantage elsewhere, and we'll get on to positional advantage in the 102. Likewise, the common logic is if you're drafting RBs and wide receivers early, wait on a tight end. I think that counts, except if it's Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce had 60% more points last year, or something stupid like that, than his nearest running mate in the tight end community. He is that good. And will he eventually fall off? People have been predicting his downfall for the past 3-4 years. He has not. Draft Travis Kelce in the 1st. If you get a chance, you will not regret it. 4th pick, fourth tip was always been, and because if you've listened to this podcast for any amount of time, you'll always know that I really don't like drafting kickers and defenses. My piece of advice here is maybe don't even draft a kicker or a defense. Give yourself options and flexibility until week 1 actually starts. I mean, who really has a ride or die person in their special teams, really? You're going to be streaming them. You're going to be changing them around. So why waste a draft pick when you could pick up someone with upside who, in the first couple of weeks or last couple of weeks of preseason, potentially, that someone picks up an injury and you've just got a bit more flexibility on a team without having to dip into the waiver wires and burn your priority. Simple thing there, and that's just my personal preference. But I would consider not even drafting one, and I've done that in a couple of leagues before, and it makes sense. You don't have to start a legal lineup until week 1. Now, some general kind of logic here, which I think still does stand. Last year, I talked quite a lot about balancing the risk in early rounds. depending on your position. So I did this in last year in the Megla Bowl, and it failed miserably. If you're early in the draft order, balancing risk is about defending your position, and if it's late, it's taking more risks as you'll be more agile. So if you're in the first spot, you want someone who's going to perform as a 101. So maybe take someone with a lot of upside, but a safer floor than maybe someone who's got more variability that you might be able to get at 102, 103. You might be dropping a little bit, but you don't want to lose that position. And then in the second round, if you have swung for the fences, you want to make sure that you've got someone who's really stable, or vice versa. In the second round, maybe just get someone who's a bit more risky because there is potentially more upside because you hit a better floor in your first round pick. At the later, you may be stacking picks. So I really like the idea of a couple of risky wide receivers. And I say risky just based on the contract and things coming out of camp at the moment in Stephon Diggs and Devontae Adams. I really like them as a potential late round stack in a 10 or 12 man league. They're out there, and it's weird because these guys are league winners. If you can pick up those kind of things, then you can balance your players later on in the draft as well. And yeah, number 6 is kind of an extension of that thought as well. And I've always said look for league winners. And last year, I petitioned for Sutton and Pittman to be the league winners. They were not. They were terrible. I mean, Sutton had a bad season all around, mainly because of Russ. I think he's still got quality there. Maybe he's missed a step, and maybe he's going to be behind Jerry Jeudy in the pecking order. We don't know yet. It's a bit of a murky field there. But Pittman was better than advertised. I think he was a great volume play in PPR. He didn't disappoint too much, but he just didn't get in the end zone nearly enough because of bad quarterback play as well. I'm not quite sure who they are this year. I've talked a little bit about it, and a bit of a plug for my guys. So go and have a look there. I think things will come out, but you want to be looking at players potentially who are league winners that you can get in the mid rounds, who are going to either be advantageous to you based on you might jump ahead a little bit just to get that guy who you think has got so much upside if you balance the play a little bit early on. But always look for league winners, but decide early who you think they are this year, and I would target them. Don't give up a king's ransom for them, but see if you can get them, because you will probably enjoy playing with someone if you've predicted early on who's going to be the league winner, and hopefully you're eventually you're eventually proven right. And we'll go over who could be potential league winners in future episodes, where we'll be doing each of the positional breakdowns, position by position, and seeing who we like as prospects coming out into the draft this year. That was a mouthful. And I said, further in my point number 7 here, late rounds continue to swing for the fences. Who are the darlings of the late round this year? Will we find another Ramondre Stevenson? Probably not, because he was so good based on where he was drawn. But CJ Stroud could have an absolute breakout, as could Bryce Young. Jonathan Ringo stands a good chance of being one of those late round swings who could have wide receiver 1 upside, maybe wide receiver 2 upside. But those guys are where you're paying 13th round prices and getting a 6th round type player. Those are where you want. Jared Goff was a great view, although he felt like less of a swing last year, and more of a, he could get good again because he's shown that in the past. Practice and you find out who that is, and that's maybe a bit of a an overshare, because that's one of our later points. Anyway, back to point number 8. This is an interesting one, and this comes with experience. I think I'm always keen to just make sure people watch what other people are doing and understand what your next 2 targets are. So the way I always draft is I draft in blocks. I draft in tiers, and I'll draft in block. We'll go on to tiers in a minute. But in blocks, so you're looking at your next 2 picks. So if you're in the middle of the order, you're always looking 2 rounds ahead and saying, right, okay, who will potentially become available to me? There are going to be players who specifically draft on ADP, so they're going to be all right, who's next on the list? I'll take the next most valuable player. Is he in the position? Well, he could be, and then go there. But if you have a team set up and you've gone wide receiver, for your next 2 rounds, you probably need to go running back to balance your team if you've got a kind of standard lineup. So you need to look ahead at who would be available, and if someone isn't going to be available and you think you can reach for them. So if you've got a stacking ADP of a load of wide receivers, but you need a running back and he's you think he might be available, he might not, reach for him. I always think it's worthwhile looking at it. And with that, you can also look at who else in your who's driving ahead of you between your next two rounds. What they need as well. If they need a running back, if they need a tight end, if they need a quarterback based on the position you are in the draft as well, you can evaluate and say, well, is that player likely to go? Is that you'll be able to kind of figure out your guys based on once you're 3 or 4 rounds in, what kind of strategy they're going for, if they are going for strategy, if they are just going for best player available, or whether they're filling in needs as well. Some players are likely to value quarterback over running back, depending on what round they are and what their needs are. So always look at what your next 2 targets should be and the likelihood of them coming back, and then evaluate that. It'll help with disappointment as well, and it'll help with forward planning. But you don't have to plan 8 rounds in advance. You plan in 2 round blocks. I think is a suitable way to draft, and it makes it very manageable as well. And I'd always say with that, my last couple of points is at number 9, don't tilt. Just because someone else is doing something doesn't mean they actually know this team. You know what kind of team you want to draft, and what kind of team you need to build around as well. What kind of players you need to build into there as well. Don't tilt just because something else is happening, something groupthink is happening. If, for example, there is a run on quarterbacks in the second round, doesn't mean you have to get a quarterback. You can pivot elsewhere and go after the running back that you needed, knowing that you are going to have little to no competition if everyone else is going there. It's that zigzagging a little bit, and we'll dig into that a little bit more in a bit more of a an exact example. But they might not know what's best for them. Do your analysis on their team. Think if they're doing right. If you need to go with the trend, go with the trend. If you don't have to tilt, but just be mindful of what other people are doing. And final thing is practice. Put yourself in different positions. I've always been an advocate for this. I currently am doing at least 1 mock draft a day because I'm obsessive, and I'm doing it in lots of different formats as well. But put yourself in different positions as well. Don't just say, right, I'm drafting from the first, so I'm going to always draft from the first. Put yourself in different positions. Put yourself in different challenges. Have a think about what other people are going to be thinking in those positions as well. At the very least, if you don't know what position you're going to go into, it's going to be a randomized draft order. Draft first, middle, and last. Or a variation thereof, or just kind of one in, or like second from last, middle, that kind of thing. And give yourself a false challenge. I did it recently, where I did I let a wheel decide which position I had to draft, and I ended up drafting a QB in the second round. And I was like, okay, well, how's that going to hurt my team makeup if I have to do that? If I have to pivot, if I have to tilt, how am I going to react to that? 0 RB, to try not drafting a running back until a 3rd or 4th round, potentially, or 4th or 5th round even. Always practice. Get to know what you're doing. So, recap of the top 10. the 101 that we've evolved. It's almost a 101.5 now. Draft a running back early, unless you don't. Wait on a QB, unless you don't. Wait on a tight end, unless it's Travis Kelce. Don't draft a kicker or a defense. I maintain that. I think it's a good idea, but maybe we're going to evolve on that in our second half here. Balance risk. I think it's always going to be key there. Look for league winners, players who you think have a higher standard than the consensus. Swing in the late rounds. Just because it's the best player available on ADP doesn't mean it's the best player for your team. Watch what people are doing, but don't expect them to know what they're doing. And planning those two blocks. Number 9, don't tilt, and number 10, practice. Can't get enough of that. And we'll be practicing a lot on this show over the next few weeks, going into draft season. And you can follow along and do it as well. Right, that's the draft 101. Now let's flip the script a bit, and on the other side of this break, we will go through the draft 102. And just like that, we are back with another 10 tips. These are 10 tips you haven't heard from before. So the 101 was 10 tips that you heard last year, and hopefully you took into last year, and they served you incredibly well. The 102 is an evolution of that. So what I want to do is give a bit of an intermediate slash expert view of things that I'm picking up on doing, that I think are really important in drafts, and they're underrated techniques, but and how to use them a little bit. So this is going to be a bit of a discussion with myself, really, on this one. So hopefully you can get something out of this. But we'll start with something that I think is becoming very common, especially at this time of year where people are doing a lot of best ball drafts. But yeah, we'll start with this. Number 11, stacks can be really powerful, but not all are created equal. So a stack, if you listen to the 101 or Fancy A to Z, is where you have two players from the same team who are going to be synergistic with each other. So it's a quarterback thrown to a running back, or quarterback thrown to a wide receiver. So you're maximizing your value. A good example of this is if you get Mahomes and you want to, you know, he's going to throw a lot of touchdowns. You want a late round wide receiver to maximize your second round value there with a cheap but favored weapon. Kadarius Toney is a great option if you're picking him up late. So that is your stack there. There are more better. There are better stacks. Obviously, if you get Mahomes and Kelsey, that is fantastic. Burrow and Chase, again, fantastic. But the way you're positioning them, you're probably drawing them both in the first and second, or second and third round, or first and third round. Are you killing your team elsewhere? And we talked about the need to bring in wide receiver and running backs early. You're probably neglecting one or the other to make sure that you're getting that stack. You're forcing that stack a little bit. There are some that are maybe a bit better value. I've talked about Justin Fields in the 5th round. DJ Moore is normally available around that place, or in the 6th round. So if you're late in the 5th and 6th, I've been picking up Fields and Moore quite a lot. And I'm quite lucky because I'm in a keeper league where I already have Fields. I'm targeting Moore in the 5th because I think he is a potential league winner for me in that stack. But there are potentially powerful stacks available to you later on as well. For example, if you got Justin Jefferson in the 1st round, Kirk Cousins. Sorry, no, not Christian Kirk. Kirk Cousins is a great one. Likewise, Kupp and Stafford. They're all really powerful stacks in theory, but you're not hitching your whole team to it. Kirk Cousins and Matt Stafford could potentially be your QB2. So you're giving up a lot less and you're risking a lot less on your draft, and potentially giving you more options to pivot elsewhere. You're not saying I need to go for this strategy, or otherwise do or die. So coming back to that, stacks are really cool. I've had in the past, I've had Herbert thrown to Mike Williams. That was brilliant for a few weeks. Back in a couple of seasons ago. If you get anything like that, you're laughing. But don't destroy your team makeup just to get those positions that you feel would be fun for maybe a couple of weeks. And by that as well, you can't necessarily win or lose in the draft, but you can make it a lot easier and harder on yourself. I would always evaluate yourself if you've done a season before. Are you good at keeping up with waivers? Do you have time to make sure that you can put in the effort each week and make sure you keep your team going? If not, then what I'd recommend is front load your effort for the draft and make sure that you do as much to win your draft as you can. You won't win the whole league from your draft, but you can put yourself in a much better position to have less urgency in management. If you're taking more risks, for example, you're probably going to need to be on waivers a bit more. So work out what kind of player you are. You can't win or lose it in the draft, but you can certainly hamper your team or give your team a massive boost. If you can afford to spend time now and you're great on waivers, you are laughing and you have a very much a better chance of success. And to give yourself a better chance of success, I found that the last few years there are massive drop-offs in every single position, and depending on how your league is scored, depends on which ones are important. But there is always an advantage to gaining a positional advantage, and that's point number 13. Unlucky for some, hopefully not unlucky for you. If you have the ability to take 3 of the top wide receivers, for example, as everyone's fighting over running backs, that is fantastic. If you can take the first tight end, Travis Kelce was so much better, and you have to, if you have in a league where you have to play a tight end, it's a huge advantage because that gap is so big and it gives you lots of opportunities. But remember, if you're doing so, if you're going a different direction while other people are fighting over one position, you want to get an advantage over another, you will have to probably sacrifice position in deeper drafts. And think everyone expects to come out of their draft and say, I've got a very even team. That never happens. And we'll look at that in a mock draft we'll do in a bit. You will have to sacrifice a position, whether it is your wide receiver 2, your running back 1 potentially. In deeper drafts and deeper leagues, you will have to sacrifice position, and that is becoming more common, and it encourages more activity in the market as well, which I think leads to a better fantasy experience personally. That's just my point of view there. Further to that, if you're going for a position advantage, you need to have a plan B. And position advantage for me, I already used the example of going after wide receivers while everyone's going after running backs. Make sure you know how to pivot a little bit. Whether if you're doing that and you know it's going to turn into a 0 RB where you don't draft a running back till later, that's great. But make sure you're not put in a position where you have to draft players you don't want to. There are players who are going to be on your on your list crossed out effectively. You don't trust this player at all. They've burned you before. That's fine. But always give yourself a plan B to make sure you know what you're going to pivot to. And that comes back to our point number 10 in 101: practice, practice, practice. Again, evolution on all of these points is, and this is a really particular piece of advice that I found really useful in a couple of mocks I've done recently. Zig whilst everyone zags. Sometimes. Sometimes groupthink is good, and we've talked about the fact that you don't necessarily want to be drawn into the run on quarterbacks, but you might not want to be left behind. It's more situational, but I'll pair it up with the fact that I say don't draft kickers or defenses, but potentially there is always one guy or one team that you think is going to be solid. And this year, if I was going to put my money on anything, Justin Tucker is going to have a great year because I think it's going to be a more potent offense. It's going to get more opportunities. And the Cowboys they just look stacked. I mean, maybe the Eagles are close second. The 49ers are always going to be fantastic. But I think that the Cowboys are going to be great. They've still got a really fantastic secondary. They've got an amazing set of pass rushers. So, they are going to be great. So, in a 15 round, and I'll try and demonstrate this later actually. I've done it a few times where if you're at the end of the draft and you want an outfield player, let's say, okay, I need I'm going for my swing on a late round QB or wide receiver, etc. If you instead, in your kind of penultimate rounds before your last round, start the run on kickers and defense early, you can get a positional advantage there even. And I've found more often than not that the players I want to swing for in that late round are actually still available. So, I would recommend giving that a go and seeing what comes out. You know what? At the very least, you can lead the pack on any run because people will start. Once people think if you have done your draft well, people will think you know what you're doing. People will follow. People are sheep. I think that is the reason why we zig when everyone else zags. I would say if you're at the end of the draft, either the start or the finish, don't worry too much about reaching. In a 10-man league, you could have 20 picks between your pick this one and your next one. It could be 24 and 12, or it could be even more if you're in a bigger league. And we'll experience that hopefully in the mock that we're going to do at the end of the episode. So reaching, I think, is perfectly fine. You need to see setting. Again, you could set a positional standard as well and get ahead of any run on a position group by going after the player you want. So define the players that you want to go after as well. Look in those 2-round blocks and just understand that there are going to be players that you're going to miss on because there's going to be a long wait, but don't get disappointed. And if you have to reach a little bit, not too far, but if you have to reach a little bit to get the player you need to make sure that is the player that makes your team work, is a nexus player for you, then don't be afraid to reach a little bit if you're at the ends of your drafts. I would probably actually prefer being at the end of a draft than being 2 or 3 back. So in that kind of 7 spot in a 10-man league, the 9 spot in a 12-man league, I feel it gives you more control over how you dictate the next round that you're coming into. And extending from everything we talked about in 101 and practice, I would say go beyond just practicing and evaluate yourself after each mock. Look at critically what you did well and what you didn't do well. And with that as well, number 18 is don't forget your league and scoring system, and how your draft is set up as well. if it's an elimination league, focus on week one. Duh. You know, if it's a vampire league, play it safe. If it's points per first down, to evaluate different players differently. Also, third round reversal is very common, and we're going to experience that in the League of Collusionary Gentlemen this year. So watch out for that, which means it spins on the third round, so your perspective changes, and it makes it a bit more even potentially. Auction is also a thing that's common as well. So make sure you have values on players. It's becoming, it's maybe still niche outside of expert leagues, but it is becoming more common, especially in dynasty formats where fab is becoming the norm as well. 19, I'm just laboring the point of practice, but ask others to draft with you and get real life experience. And you know what, join in with me. Maybe I'll do a live show where I invite listeners or people on Twitter to come and draft with me, and we'll see what chaos we can create there. And finally, probably the most important point that thing I've picked up in the last couple of years is draft in tiers, or be left in tiers. Yeah, bit of play on words there for you guys. Cue the. We'll lean on this in the next few episodes, and we will be doing tier-based episodes for quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. I'm going to ignore kickers and defense because I just think it's so unpredictable based on circumstances. But effectively, a tier, in my opinion, is gives you an indication of when you should pick someone up. So if, let's say, your top tier of quarterbacks is Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Jalen Hurts, and you can't differentiate between them, you should be happy with getting any of them. If you need to get someone in that tier, go for it. Understand where the tier breaks and what the difference is going to be between those three and, let's say, Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow. In running back land, make sure you understand the tier difference between Christian McCaffrey and Austin Eckler and those guys, and the guys like Nick Chubb who are going to be potentially pure runners. How is it going to affect your team? And that gives you the opportunity to divorce yourself from the idea of ADP and picking the best player available from a list. It's really easy to just pick the top player, and that's what auto draft is going to give you most of the time as well. So don't auto draft. That's maybe the tip 21, but understand where you can get an advantage and get a lead on things, because it all plays into the fact that you should not be, conforming to an ADP. ADP is an average of so many people drafting in so many different ways and so many different positions that it's not going to make sense for you to play the ADP game. So if you draft in tiers, you can make sure that you are prioritizing your team makeup and getting those positional advantages or best you can, and make sure you're not left wanting at the end of the day. So I think drafting in tiers is really key, and we'll go over that in a bit more detail in the coming episodes. So let's just recap that 102. Number 11, we had stats can be really powerful, but not all are created equal. Number 12 is just more of a bit of advice. You can't win or lose in your draft, but you can make your league experience a lot easier if you do well. I would always encourage gaining positional advantage. Give yourself a plan B, which is an extension of that practicing, just making sure that you've done it in different ways. Zig while everyone zags. Don't conform to groupthink, I think is really important. If you're at the ends, don't worry about reaching. Really important. Evaluate. Write a list, or just give yourself a grade potentially. There are loads of things that you can pump in your team and see what your grade you get, and it will give you an idea of how you do. Just keep a running score if you're practicing on a regular basis. Be wary of how your league and draft is set up. It's always key there, and it's something that a lot of people forget about. Superflex, for example, it's really key. If QB is important, make QB important. Change your strategy accordingly. Practice with other people, because practicing against the computer, which we're going to do in a bit, is only useful to a certain point. And draft in tiers, which will form the basis of the next 4 episodes over the next month for you guys as well. So you'll be able to see that. Right, we're going to pivot in a second. I'm going to stop recording, and I'm going to change the setup so we can look at the live draft order for our League of Collusionary Gentlemen. I'll be back with you after that, and then we'll jump straight into a draft of that based on my position in a 16-man draft. It's going to be nightmarish, and I'm going to come out with palpitations, but hopefully you guys enjoy. I will see you on the other side. Right, competition time, guys. Rules are on the screen as you see them now, but part one is we're trying to drive subscriptions to rugbywithpads.com. You can find all the information here, but for every single subscription you make from £1 a month, you can get all the benefits like you would do on a normal Patreon. But as you go up, you can also get merch with it as well. And this is how we're selling our merch that you've seen me wearing during some of these YouTube videos as well. If you enter for as little as £1, you'll be entered into the competition. There's bonus entries for higher tiers as well. Now, we'll announce the winner of that on the pod once we've got a minimum of 10 subscribers, and then part two comes in. So get ready already. Go to youtube.com/rugbywithpads, click subscribe and comment on any of the videos. And there's a fair few. We bring out the videos at the same time as we do on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And you'll be entered into a competition to win either a t-shirt or a pop socket. It's free, but we must make sure that part one is won first. Let's drive that traffic over to rugbywithpads.com, and the draw announcements will be on the pod. I'll keep you updated with what we're doing and put some stuff on socials. Right, back to the pod. Hello, and we are back with a transition there. So we are, as promised, we are going to get into the hopefully interesting to some of you guys anyway listening in, draft order for the League of Collusionary Gentlemen. The League of Collusionary Gentlemen is the league that was started last year as New Beginnings, but has now turned into something bigger. We have 8 returning players, 5 currently new players, and we have 3 holding positions. It might be a League of 14, it might be a League of 16. What we're doing is we're drafting with those holding players or holding positions in there at the moment. Now, as we spoke about before, this is a draft lottery. So the way it works is that if you won, you get less lottery tickets. If you won, if you didn't, if you came last, you got less, and if you're new to the game, you get more as well. So it works out to be, I'm getting 1. The guy who came, Matt, where is he? Who came second gets 3, going all the way down to the guy who came last, getting 9 points, and everyone else who's new getting 10. So effectively, 1 up on someone coming last. The way lottery drafts work is similar to the NBA, if you got that. So the bottom few teams get a higher chance of getting the number 1 pick. We hope it's fair, but we'll see. So I still stand a chance of getting the number 1 pick, but every time I've tested this out, I've got the last pick because there is infinitesimally small odds of me getting anywhere near the top. But let's see what happens here. So without further ado, and to make sure there's no jiggery pokery, we are recording this, and I'll overlay some tense draft music in post. But yeah, let's generate that order, shall we? So number 1 pick, who's it going to be? Let's see. Most likely it's going to be either a holding pick or one of our new players, but who has got the coveted prize of pick number 1 in the draft? And it's Harry. It's one of our returning members. Harry did well last year. I think he came 5th up for his first year. So, well done, Harry. You have the prize position of the number 1 pick, and you are now on the clock officially. In the pick number 2, followed close behind him, and a very, very coveted spot, probably more so than the number 2 because he gets to pick ahead in the second round, is Oz. Wow. Boz is a returning player. I've been playing with him for a good long time. I play in 2 other leagues with him currently, maybe even 3 if he's lucky. But Boz did okay last year. I think he came 3rd or 4th, but actually picked up a couple of extra tickets thanks to a bit of a draft lottery bonus we had. We had a couple of off-season games, and Boz gained himself a couple of extra spots there. At pick number 3, round up this top 3, we have Ollie. Of course, welcome Ollie. You're a new member. You've got a coveted draft pick, and you should be very happy with that. So get practicing now. Pick number 4, we have another newbie. We've got Mike, known as Shane Falco's Jockstrap. If you are an NFL film nerd, well done. You've got a really nice draft spot there. At pick 5, rounding off this top 5, who have we got? Is it going to be someone returning? Is it going to be anticlimactic? Wow, that is a turnout for the books. Matt came 2nd last year, so Matt has defied the odds, and with only 3 tickets, he has managed to get in the top 5. So that's Harry, Boz, Ollie, Mike, and Matt starting off the draft. Coming in the next lot, number 6, we have a holding player, so we're going to ignore that and go on to number 7. Hopefully we don't have another holding player. We've got Andy. Andy being a new member of the squad. Andy, welcome, and pick number 7. In mid-table, you should be pretty happy with that. You can pick up some decent players in the first round there. Maybe Bijan Robinson drops to you there. Pick number 8, we have Dan. Dan, who will definitely be wanting Bijan Robinson. Dan disappointed a little bit in this league last year, but is very much, you'll have heard him a lot if you listen to the pod. He's a regular contributor, and will be keen to pick up someone really good in that spot. He has been doing bits in our Dynasty League, which he took over the squad. This is his first official redraft. So, well done, Dan. Pick number 8, third in the table. Good position to draft from. Pick number 9, we have Jack. Jack, who came quite low last year. He's been playing for a little while. I only played with our crew since last year. I've known him for forever and a day. Jack, well done. Pick number 9. That's going to do you well for sure. Pick number 10. We have a holding player. A bit disappointing. Let's move on. Pick number 11, a new player. This just shows I'm not showing favoritism. Ben is actually my brother. He's new to fantasy. He's new to the NFL. He's been a supporter of the pod. Thank you very much. One of our first Gridiron Guardians. So thank you very much, Ben, for subscribing. You get pick number 11 for your efforts. Pick number 12, we still got the person who came last year, not been drawn out, and of course we're still on the clock as well. We have a new player, J Salt. I'm afraid I don't know your proper name. I only know your username. I will correct that, but J Salt, well done and welcome to the league. At pick 13, we still have one more holding player, so maybe this is going to be it. It's not. It's going to be the person who came last year, and it's going to be someone who's familiar to all of you listening. He's been on the pod before. John is my co-commissioner in Dynasty. He is my commissioner in our League of Record. John came last year in this league. He just couldn't buy a win. It just didn't work out for him. So he is going to have the less coveted pick 13. Lucky for some, unlucky for me. Unlucky for John, anyway. Let's move on. Pick 14. I'm still in the mix. Could I not get last? No, it's a holding player again. That's a shame. So we've only got 2 people left to pick, and I think, you know what? This is crazy. I think it's Ed and me. So Ed and I have played together for a long time. Ed and I both reached our first final last year in our League of Record. I beat Ed out for that. He is disappointed. He probably won't ever forgive me. Will he get one up on me on this one? Yes, he does. He gets 15, which means that once again, I am right back at the bottom. So your draft order is going to be Harry, Boz, Ollie, Mike, Matt, holding player, Andy, Dan, Jack, another holding player, Ben, J Salt, John, holding player, Ed, and me, Rugby with Pads. Right, that's it. Well, you know what? Let's just jump straight into a draft, shall we? I'll flick over and I'll see you on the other side. So we've got our draft set up here. I'm sitting firmly in the 16th spot. We had to zoom out a little bit to make sure it worked. So let's just start it. So this is a league where the rosters are QB, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, tight end, a flex, which is a wide receiver, running back, and tight end, a kicker, a defense, and then 5 bench spots. Early on, we see Justin Jefferson and Travis Kelce go early as a 1-2. Travis Kelce is a tight end premium league, I believe. So, Travis Kelce is going to be even more valuable for team number 2. So let's see if we can get ahead of this. And you know what? I did a mock draft for this the other day from this position, and I'm going to go the same thing. So on my other screen, funnily enough, I have, if I can, manage to get there, I've got my my tiers picks, and you know what? In my top tier, in my monsters, across the board, at QB, I have a couple of players. You'd be surprised who they're going to be. At running back, I have Austin Eckler as my 101, and then I've got Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, all of whom have gone. My top wide receivers, I've got Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase as my LSU monsters, then Cups, Diggs, Devontae Adams, and Tyreek Hill, all of whom have gone. And at tight ends, it's Kelce, and then a massive drop off. So you know what? for the sake of testing this out, I'm going to go with my top rated quarterback is Patrick Mahomes, and hopefully I can get a stack later on. So let's see if we can test that theory. So I'm going to take Patrick Mahomes, and I immediately get the next pick. This is a third round reversal, and I know exactly who I'm going to pick. I'm going to pick the next player on my list at running back, which is going to be Josh Jacobs. He had immense quality last year. I'm going to need to have a robust running back. I can probably make up wide receiver a bit later on, especially if I'm going to be enhancing their value potentially with Mahomes in the later rounds. I'm going to go with Josh Jacobs, and then I've got a little while to wait. After Josh Jacobs, Nick Chubb goes, Derrick Henry, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts. I'm just picking out some key players here. Ramondre Stevenson in the second, which is really high, and it's a third round reversal, so I actually get the 301, so I don't have to wait too much longer. I'm looking at the board here, and I'm feeling like the next set of running backs are interesting. I've got Travis Etienne, who I don't rate particularly highly. Kenneth Walker, who I think value has been tanked by Charbonnet. Aaron Jones has never not been a running back one, but do I really, really like him? I don't. I think there's going to be regression. I think they're going to throw it a bit more potentially. So I'm looking at my wide receiver room and seeing who's in my next tier. And there's one name that jumps out to me who is middle of my next tier, a set and forget, is Devonta Smith. And yes, he is probably the best wide receiver 2 in the league. Keenan Allen is potentially the wide receiver 1 over there in the charge as well, but he is frequently injured. Devonta Smith doesn't have that. He doesn't play in that game. He plays bigger than he is. Skinny Batman, they call him, but I'm going to go with Devonta Smith there, and he's going to be my wide receiver 1. So it started out with Mahomes, Josh Jacobs, Devonta Smith. I've got a long wait, really long wait. It's 16 players currently. It might be 14, but this is I always think it's good to challenge yourself. Some interesting players going in the third round. This Justin Fields, because it's a bigger set. You're going to see everything squashing. George Kittle finally goes at the start of the 4th. Justin Herbert. So your kind of top quarterbacks have all gone now. Kyle Pitts in the 4th. That's interesting. So someone getting a bit sweaty over tight end, and then it's back to me after James Conner. James Conner, someone who was potentially targeting, and DJ Moore, who I do like a lot. They're both kind of my guys going into the season, and I'm looking at the positions available to me, and there's one that actually cries out. I think is really good value, and who I think is probably more solid and dependable than a lot of tight ends. And I probably need to adjust my rankings accordingly. But Darren Waller is really good. I think Dallas Goedert and Darren Waller are both fantastic players. I think Darren Waller maybe gets the edge for me because I've already got Devonta Smith, so I don't want to have that kind of weird hybrid stack there. Yeah, I'm going to have to fill out my team. I'm going to have to. I feel like I've got a good wide receiver 1, good running back 1, tight end be interesting, but is that going to leave me damaged elsewhere? And I'm thinking about two positions ahead, and probably at the end you're looking at 3 picks ahead. So if I go now, I'm going to go for Darren Waller, and I'm probably going to pair him. I'm probably going to pair him with someone like Mike Evans, I think, because I think Mike Evans has a chance to be a number 1 there. I like Mike Williams a lot. I like Michael Pittman. I think he could be consistent. You know what? And then I'm thinking about who's going to come around next, and I'm going to miss out on all these guys on the left. Kadarius Toney, I'm going to miss out on. I don't want to reach too far for him because I don't think he has that much value. And that's why not all stacks are created equal. And my next set of players who are probably going to become available to be Juju Smith-Schuster, Gabe Davis. Okay, so I'm going to pick up Darren Waller because I believe Gabe Davis is a really interesting pick, and I think he will land back to me potentially. If not, we're looking at someone like the wide receiver range becomes a bit bare there. So I think to protect myself, I need to take another wide receiver because I'm kind of happy if I get Brian Robinson, Rashad Penny, Samaje Perine, who I think could be a number 1 out there as well. Devin A.K.A, who I think will become a number 1. Yeah, I'm kind of going for semi RB0, and I'm not punting on any particular position. I'm going kind of middle of the road, which is maybe something that when we evaluate this at the end, I regret, but we'll have to see. So I'm going to go wide receiver, and I'm going to go for a player that I have a lot of faith in personally. I'm going to reach a little bit. Okay, do I want Mike Evans with a quarterback that we know isn't great, or do I want Michael Pittman with a quarterback that we don't know isn't great? Or do I want someone who is going to just be solid throughout? I think if I go down there, I'm reaching too far. So I'm going to go with. You know what? I'm thinking about injury risk as well. Michael Pittman was injured, so was Mike Williams. But Mike Williams is definitely the number 2 there, but he has someone else. I'm going to go Michael Pittman. Yeah, I'm just going to trust my gut here. I thought he was valuable. I could have gone Cam Akers there, but I think Cam Akers with Sony Michel coming in is still, they don't have 100% confidence in him. Isaiah Pacheco, Kamara goes in the 5th that late because the suspect his suspension is potentially looming. Some great guys. Kadarius Toney, went in the start of the 5th. We've got a run on tight end, so I'm glad I went Darren Waller there. We've got Evan Engram and Joker and Frymouth, and then it would have been a massive drop off after that. Rashad Penny does go, but you know what? Who is left on the board at the running back position? It is Brian Robinson has left. Gabe Davis is also available to me, so I think this is a really easy pickup. I'm going to go with Brian Robinson, who has a chance to be fantastic, and I've got him in my dynasty team as well. And I'm going to go Gabe Davis. I'm going to go for that extra dynasty source. I've got him as well, and I really rate him as a wide receiver 2. So that covers our core guys. Yeah, I know I always say don't necessarily fill out your team, and I'm going to go for that next because I'm not going to fill out kicker and defense next. But I've gone QB, running back. What is I've gone QB, running back, wide receiver, tight end, which is not something I don't ever do. But I thought Darren Waller was just too much to give up. That's Mahomes, Jacobs, Monte Smith, Waller, Pittman, Robinson, Gabe Davis come to me, and it's about to come back to me. Couple of key players that have gone there. Schultz was an interesting one. I think he stands a chance to be good. P. Ryan, who we spoke about earlier. A.K.A. we spoke about earlier, was good. Jarrett McKinnon would have been a lovely stack with Mahomes, but I'm not going to force the stack. I've got Mahomes. He's great. So if it was going to be great. It was going to be nice, but I wasn't ever going to force it. And that's one of my main rules: never force something that you think is should be a thing, because there are definitely still options there. I've got Rashee Rice. I've got Sky Moore, and we get into the range where maybe we do have a couple of throwaway picks. I feel like my core is really nice. We've got a lot of starters here, and a lot of people who are the number 1 positions in their team. Patrick Mahomes is number 1, Josh Jacobs is number 1, Brian Robinson probably is the first and second down back. Monte Smith isn't the number 1, but Michael Pittman is on potentially a lesser team. Darren Waller could be the number 1 pass catcher in that entire team, and Gabe Davis is a number 2, which is what you want in your flex. So I'm thinking, where's my team lacking? I do need another running back, and I do need another wide receiver, I think, at the very least. At wide receiver, I am going to take a punt on, and it's going to be a bit of a reach. I'm going to take a bit of a punt on Sky Moore, and I'm elevating him because of the stack a little bit. I don't think he will be available when he comes back. And if I look at the next set of players who are going to come back to me, Rashid Shaheed, I'm not interested in. Rashid Shaheed, sorry, not particularly interested in. And then you get down to some bums. You know what? I'm going to risk it and go for a little bit of a stack, and I'm going to go for, because I'm more confident in wide receiver. I think I can stretch out a little bit before the time runs out. I'm going to go Sky Moore. And then I'm going to go with a base player. I'm going to go with someone who I think will get some play, but I think could be an interesting upside in Kendre Miller. And for the exact reason why Alvin Kamara has dropped, you've seen Kendre Miller's stock rise. And running backs, rookie running backs have a lot of value. They have a lot of, tread left on the tires. So he's going to be pick number 9 for me. So, starting filling up my bench already. We've got 5 picks left, including a kicker and defense, and we're going to try out one of our zag techniques in a minute. So Rashee Rice does go there. He was the potential other player, but I think let's give Sky Moore, who flashed a little bit towards the end of the season. Nico Collins would have been a great player to pick up this late. Kyler Murray in the 10th in another running back run, and I think everyone except Team 6 quarterback run. Everyone has a quarterback, so Team 6 is going to suffer because there aren't many quarterbacks left, and this is where we're getting into doldrums. And at this point in the second and third bench spots, I'm looking to make sure I swing a little bit, and I'm getting players with upside, and I'm not looking to prevent players. I don't like playing defensively. I'm looking at players who show a lot of upside. I think Mike Gesicki shows a lot of upside. I really like that, and Darren Waller has had injury problems in the past, so I'm looking at Mike Gesicki. I'm looking at Alex Pierce as a potential replacement for Michael Pittman and handcuff, but is that going to be too messy potentially? John Mechie, I think they could work around Van Jefferson, shouts out to me a lot. But you know what, I'm going to start out, and I am going to pick up Mike Gesicki. And people might not like that, but they're going to need to throw it to someone. And he is a pass catching tight end, no doubt about it. He's not going to be used in blocking schemes. I think they bought him for a reason. I think they're going to scheme him up. And I think I'm going to go for Van Jefferson in the hopes that someone like potentially Gus Edwards drops to me late, so I can maybe pick him up as my final running back. But yeah, I'm going to go with Van Jefferson, who could well carve out a name for him as the number 2 in that lineup. I can't see anyone else being. Tyler Higbee would be the only competition there, but he hasn't been consistent enough. So Van Jefferson, you know what? It's a dart throw. Let's go for it. And these are players who are probably going to end up on your waivers at some point or another. Jordan Love goes. CJ Stroud. We're seeing those rookies go. Wow, Team 7 picks up and snakes Team 6 for a quarterback. They've got Matthew Stafford and the Team 6 are left with their QB1 as Kenny Pickett, someone I wouldn't want to be left as my QB1. And that's why you don't want it too late on these things, guys. But Alex Pierce and John Mechie, who were talking about Clyde Edwards, was hilarious. And you know what? People have already started to zag. People have already started picking up their defenses and kickers. Well, not kickers yet. So you know what? This is where I am going to zag, because Gus Edwards was just sniped ahead of me. So I am going to pick up my kicker and defense here. And ultimately, I think most of the skill players, because I'm just going to start the run now. It's going to be, you know, from here, kickers and defenses, and for the next 16 picks, and I'm going to be left with the same set of skill players regardless. So I'm going to pick up have they already gone? Have the Cowboys already gone? No, they haven't. They're here. I'm going to pick up the Dallas Cowboys, who I think are the most talented defense in the entire league, and I'm going to pick up Justin Tucker because that is a positional advantage in itself. The fact he can kick 60-yard bombs, if you have a scoring setting which allows for that, that's great. And as I said, it's just going to be a run on defenses. The 49ers were picked just after me. The selection of high-end kickers, and everyone's just filling out their lineups. It'd be interesting to see who's left. It's a 16-team league, so maybe picking up a defense is actually a little bit advantageous early on, because you're going to be left with dross. I mean, if I look at who's left next, the next best defenses, Tampa Bay would have been nice still, Tennessee Titans and all less so, Panthers, yeah, okay, so there are still some left, and then that leaves me with someone to pick up. And you know, I don't have any holes in my offense. I'm not going to pick up a QB just for the sake of having him for my roster for the sake of it. If I look really, I probably want a running back. I don't like any of these guys. I think Dwayne McBride is maybe the only one I potentially like. Pierre Strong stands a chance. Zach Evans even stands a chance of getting some playtime. Deuce Vaughn is potentially the number 2 there. You know, I talked a bit about Eric Gray earlier on in the episode. Ooh, there's no one really here that I particularly like. And you know what? With the last pick of the draft, you're not going to pick up someone you like. So I am going to pick up Kareem Hunt, because this is a throwaway pick. You know, this is the same as not drafting. He's a throwaway pick. I'm going to pick up Kareem Hunt to finish the draft. So my final from the 16 spot in the League of Collusionary Gentlemen, I've got Patrick Mahomes, Josh Jacobs, Brian Robinson, Devontae Smith, Michael Pittman, Darren Waller, Gabe Davis, Justin Tucker, Dallas Cowboys, and on my bench, Sky Moore, Kendra Miller, Mike Gesicki, Van Jefferson, and Kareem Hunt, who is currently homeless. Well, not homeless, teamless. You know, there are some nice picks here. And if I look at some of the other rosters, let's look at some of the other rosters. Let's see. Let's pick the guy who picked first and the guy who picked in the middle. So, you know, the number 1 slot ended up with Dak Prescott, David Montgomery, Zach Charbonnet, Justin Jefferson, which is insane. DK Metcalf, George Kittle. I think they've got a better wide receiver core, obviously, but a much poorer running back core. They didn't pick up their first running back until the 5th round. Drake London in the flex. We went in the 3rd. That's crazy. Yeah, that's a pretty good lineup. Pretty solid. I think I feel like our team's better in the 16th spot if I draw that as well. Let's pick someone randomly from the middle. Let's pick, if it's going to let me, let's pick slot 5. Let's have a look there, see what they would have done. They went QB early as well. They got Joe Burrow. They got the kind of tail end of that first elite group. They got CMC at the 5th spot, who could be a lot of people's 101. Khalil Herbert was then the next one. So I think there's a massive drop off in running back. So I'm glad we've got two functional running backs in our team. Amari Cooper, yeah, Christian Watson, is he a flash in the pan? Potentially. Hunted on tight end down in the 11th round. Jawan Johnson, we were potentially thinking about taking. I like George Pickens, and you know what? They've got a bit of depth in the wide receiver room. Kadarius Toney, Jameson Williams, both picks I really like on the bench. So again, they've gone with a style of play. Let's pick up one more player and then just compare. Let's pick slot 3. Let's go between those. So how do we compare to the 1, 3, and 5? And I still think we've got a slightly better team than both of them because we applied a bit more logic than maybe the computer did. We've got Justin Herbert in the 4th round. Devon A.K.A. and Roschon Johnson. That is not a stable running back room. This is a 0 RB and then some. But Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, I do not like that stack. Yes, you want all the points for every time Joe Burrow throws something. So the play between Team 3 and Team 5 will always be interesting. But yeah, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins on the same side, do not like that at all. So avoid those kind of negative stacks, the ones that are going to take them away. That is relying on that team being incredibly high powered. Dawson Knox could be cut even. I think that's a certain chance there. Calvin Ridley, who does he still have it? And on the bench, actually, this is one of the better benches I've seen. Christian Kirk, Jahan Dotson, Cortland Sutton, Kyler Murray, Irv Smith. That's really good. Without a doubt, that's really good. But they did punt on running back and chose to go for depth at wide receiver. So maybe they know something that we don't here. But that's it for today's episode. Thank you again for listening or watching or however you consuming this media. I think listening or watching are there in 2 ways. We will be back next week with our first tiers episode. I think we'll start on QBs. QBs are interesting and they're probably the most stable. So let's start there and then we'll move on to wide receivers, running backs, and finish probably with tight ends, which will be a shorter episode because there aren't many of them. And you know what? Bit of a spoiler. Travis Kelce's at the top and then it's everyone else. So we'll do that over the next few weeks. So that will take us through to August and where we'll start our off season. We'll do some more mocks. This is probably our too early mock and we'll do some recaps of what's been happening in terms of free agency trades and all of that fun stuff. So you've got a bit more in your arsenal before you start your drafts in earnest. If you have any questions, find me on all the socials at Rugby with Pads. You can email me, sam@rugbywithpads.com. You can support the show in all the ways, like and subscribe here. We've still got the competition open on rugbywithpads.com as well in terms of merch and membership. So if you want to become a Gridiron Guardian for as little as £1 a month, then you can do so. It really helps support the show, and you can get yourself some free merch by being entered into that competition as well. Like, share, subscribe. We love you all. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you all soon on the virtual gridiron.